we do want to give you examples of different paths, different subject matter, different approaches to the issue, and that will help set the stage for all of the other workshops that will follow that will go into more detail on things. So some people bring a faith-based perspective to this, some looking at it from a health issue. There are many, many paths that are converging towards seeing basic income as a solution to problems. One of the things that, that we need to consider as well, I think, is the process of convergence itself. And Barb is going to talk a little bit more about this. And the idea that we really do need to listen to each other. With these different paths, we have people coming with different concepts and even different languages. And we're not talking about French, English, or Spanish here. We're talking about the language and culture of economics, of psychology, of faith, and we don't necessarily use the same terminology and get confused sometimes. But there are challenges, so the convergence that we're seeing brings real advantages, but it has some of those challenges as well. And that includes, it makes building alliances sometimes uneasy, but work that definitely needs to be done if we're really going to shift this paradigm. For tomorrow's theme of making basic income a reality, we have the same intention, that's exposure to a range of ideas and perspectives rather than one keynote. And we want you to think about how different means, and we heard some of this last night, whether you're a politician, a researcher, an activist, there are different means that people can use to help make basic income a reality. We were actually struck by, not only did we have a record number of proposals for this Congress, but so many of them were in the reality theme. And I think that's really encouraging and exciting because it shows how much more concrete we're getting about basic income. The theory helps us, but other things are really driving us forward. I mean, I really think it's taking us leaps and bounds forward, not just steps now. I think the movement is growing exponentially. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the panelists. We have made it our policy that we're not doing long introductions. You can read some things in the program. You can Google people. So we are going to start with the order there in the program. So Sarah Bizarro from sort of Portugal and New Jersey, and yes, okay. So Sarah, I'm gonna come up, yep.
Hello.
Great.
So hi, my name is Sarah Bizarro, and I'm originally from Portugal. I am a researcher at the Center for Ethics, Politics and Society at the University of Minho, which is in the north of Portugal. But I also have been living in the United States for a long time, and I spent part of my time in New Jersey for the last maybe 8 years, and I've lived in other states. So I have that dual experience of being from Europe, but also having an American experience. And I think, so that's been helpful for me when I'm thinking about basic income and all that. And what I'm going to present today is part of a research project that I'm personally working on. I've been trying to systematize what is claimed that basic income is good for. So there's a lot of different things and a lot of debate about what basic income can achieve. And so I've been trying to organize it in some sort of way. And then as I try to organize it, I also got to a point where it helped me understand why basic income is often seen as a bipartisan policy. So since we're talking about convergency today, I thought this would be useful and would fit well with our theme. So let's start. So basic income is a notorious bipartisan policy that has been defended by people on different, on different sides of the political spectrum. The ultimate examples, Richard Nixon and Martin Luther King, I think. So we have a quote by Martin Luther King: "I am now convinced that the simplest approach will prove to be the most effective. The solution to poverty is to abolish it directly by a now widely discussed measure, the guaranteed income." This is from Where We Go From Here. I think it was his last book. And Richard Nixon: "I propose that the federal government pay a basic income to those American families who cannot care for themselves in whichever state they live." It's pretty, oh, sorry. There's the Nixon quote. So, it's been touting basic income as a bipartisan idea all over. So this is something that's in the media today, presented as a bipartisan idea. By the way, that thing that says "be free" is actually an ad that I cut. It's not, it's not part of the thing, so that's kind of funny. So I will try to understand it and why it is bipartisan, why it appeals to left and right. And if we can understand this, maybe we can delineate the shared common ground and use that to stimulate convergency on this and other policies. In order to understand bipartisanship, I want to look first at the key elements that are often cited as being a result of a basic income policy. And so, what is it good for? What is basic income good for then? Here's my little graphic. So I start from the base and the bottom, eliminate poverty. So that pyramid is supposed to be the bottom is the lowest amount that is getting paid for basic income, and then as you increase the amount, you could possibly go up the ladder up to the top, which would be freedom. So if you have, like we heard yesterday, basic income that's just above the poverty line, then you're getting, through basic income, you're getting to that level. But if you have a little bit more, you get dignity, and then security, and then citizenship is just the ability to participate in our democracy, and then finally freedom would have to be a much higher basic income, or a mix of basic income and other things. Okay, so all these things do not have to be achieved only by basic income. They can be achieved partly by basic income, but also from other policies or other things in the society that can help them come to fruition. All right, so let's see. So that's what I just explained, all the different levels. And okay, so this is important. Basic income does not need to claim that it's able to achieve all those ideals by itself. And I think that's like something that's often confused. So when people criticize basic income, they assume that we're saying that we can achieve all those things just with basic income. And that's not the case. I don't think it's the case that you can. And I don't think anybody that I know would argue that you can. So that's the main one. So what else can we use to achieve those ideals? Okay, we can add a lot of, I put some things there, but it could be other things too. So for instance, jobs. So there's a lot of talk about guaranteed jobs now. We could achieve all those things, maybe with jobs or, Social Security, housing, basic income, healthcare, education, stimulating business, certain types of laws could help achieve these things. So there's other strategies. So all these ideals can be achieved by either. I don't think these ideals can be achieved by one thing alone. I think they have to be achieved by a cluster of things. So, okay, now the bipartisan part of this presentation. So the main idea that I have is that the left and the right do not disagree about these ideals, but how to achieve them. And so that is very important in the debate. So we have to, when we are talking from different perspectives, if we can be very clear about what ideals we have in common, then we can negotiate much better to decide what policies can achieve them. And I think it's interesting because basic income does create this bipartisanship, so that led me to these ideals. There are other ideals that are not there that society also, some praises, but these at least seem to have some sort of common ground between both left-wing and right-wing positions. So as an example, if you're conservative, maybe you think the free market is better to achieve these ideals, that if you just, I don't know, I mean, you can think that reasonably, or you can think that you need the social state to achieve these ideals. But the ideals are shared, are basically shared. Okay, now the next step is that it's not only the main divide between right and left is that the right defends less government and the left defends more government. So this is a great divide between the two opposite sides. And the reason why basic income is able to bridge the divide somewhat is because it is a policy that is more government and less government at the same time. So it's more government in the sense that we are giving people a substantial amount of money to live on. So in that sense, it's more government. We've never done that. But on the other hand, the government's not really telling people what to do with that money. So it's less government. So I think this is why it's a groundbreaking bipartisan policy. It allows to at least, I'm not saying that there aren't other differences between right wing and left wing, but at least this difference, it's kind of sort of blown up with basic income. And so we can achieve some sort of convergence and agreement between the two sides by using policies to achieve these ideals that are common, but that have at least a significant part of it is achieved by basic income. I think we could convince both sides to do that. And then, of course, the rest is still going to be up to debate because not everybody's going to agree how the rest should be implemented, right? So, all right, so this also, I think, helps explain why, where the criticism to basic income comes from. So when one side, the left or the right, criticizes basic income, they're not criticizing the idea of basic income or these ideals. They're criticizing because they suspect that the other side is just going to use this policy to further the rest of their agenda. So they don't really think, oh, basic income is not going to work. They think, okay, you're going to do this so that you can cut social policy. So that's the left-wing perspective. So, or from the right wing, oh, you're doing this, but you're not really cutting anywhere else, so you're just going to have a fatter government and people are going to be lazy. So when so that's my thesis, is that what people are doing when they're criticizing, they're really criticizing usage of that policy in terms of how it can be, diminishing some other things they don't agree with. So I think that's important to have in mind. If that's the case, I think there's room for agreement. It's just a matter of like clearing the debate and say, okay, you don't agree with this part, but you agree with the part about these ideals and that basic income could be a piece of the puzzle. So, all right. So yeah, so that's basically my idea. So I put a little bit, because I live in New Jersey, I put the Democrat and Republican little symbols, so I think that this is what is important, is that if we understand the shared ideals that we are defending, and that I honestly think that conservatives share these ideals. Conservatives don't want people to live in poverty. They don't want lack of dignity. They want people to, and freedom. Freedom is like the ultimate conservative ideal, like liberty, and and individualism and so forth. And so do progressives. They agree on the ideals. So that's the main part, the first point. So if we can be clear on the ideal, and then we can use basic income to bridge the gap between the two sides. So that would be a point of agreement. And then, as the rest of the policies, that'll have to be a negotiation. Obviously, if we want to get to convergency in here, because obviously there are other differences between left and right, and they're not going to. It's not going to be easy to come to the point, but I think basic income can really help with that. All right, so that's it. And this was just like a very short presentation, so if you have any questions, you can email me or talk to me afterwards, and I'd love to hear your suggestions or opinions or so forth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Our next speaker is Dr. Yves Bonnier-Vigé.
Good morning. Since we can look at basic income from different perspectives, I will focus on the health perspective for the moment. And my main message is here, so if you are tired, you don't want to learn to hear. So what I will try to demonstrate is that health is dependent on satisfaction of basic needs. Actual programs to satisfy these needs are inefficient. They should be replaced by a universal basic income revenue. When we are talking about health, we have to think about not the biomedical paradigm, but more about the Aboriginal paradigm, for example, in Cree, the Miomatium. It's not the concept of health is the concept of a capacity. The capacity to take care of our family, the capacity to take care of our community, the capacity to be involved in the citizenship. And the World Health Organization has the same large concept of health. So it's not to be free from diseases, but it's to be involved in our proper life and our society. And the concept of health is then determined by a lot of other factors than the health sector itself. So as you see, the way we are living each day, our habit of living, the social community where we are living in, and the larger general socioeconomic, cultural, and environmental is having a very large impact. And this impact is changing over the years or over the places. At the beginning of the humanity, or in some places, to be able to nourish itself, or nourish the family, was the main determinant of health. And other places, when the nomadic people became settled in one place and many people gather, the infectious disease was the main important problem and determinant of health. Then after, you add a change to chronic diseases, and now we are really thinking that the inequalities are the main problem of health that we have now to face in the world. So, the way to solve inequalities will be our next challenge to ensure that our populations are healthy. Here you have, if I take one of the determinants, which is the revenue, we have a clear demonstration how revenue matters for health. Here you have different countries in the world, and the life expectancy that we can calculate in these countries. And here you have the gross domestic product per capita in each of these countries. What is clear, it's when your basic wealth is very low, your health is also very low. And when you increase it until a certain point, then you can have a quite good life expectancy. And even if you increase your GDP, you're not increasing very much the life expectancy. So there is a basic needs that should be attained to be able to have a good health, and it's quite a good reference to what we call a basic revenue. If we look at another table here, it's a study that has been done in Quebec, and here you have the people that are divided in quintiles. The population is divided in quintiles. The first quintile here is the people that are more favorized in our society. The fifth quintile is the more defavorized, or more deprived, if you want. So we looked at the material deprivation, the social deprivation, and then when we took both together, material and social deprivation, and we looked at some indicators of life, which is life expectancy and life expectancy in good health for men, women, and then for everybody. Yeah. So let's concentrate on the last column. If we look at the life expectancy in good health for only material deprivation, so what we call really the capacity of people to live from a material point of view only. So from the ones that are most favorized, and here the most deprived, you have 6 years of difference of expectancy of life in good health. If you look in social determinants, so to have people, social cohesion in our neighborhood and things like that, you have a difference of 5 years of life expectancy in good health. And when you combine the two, there is almost 14 years of difference of expectancy of life in good health if you're living with wealth or you're living with poverty. There's another here figure that explains the same thing, but taking into account the premature death. So we are expecting all to live at some years. For example, we think here the women will live about 83 years, and the men a little bit less. But if you're dying at 50, so you are losing some years of life. And this is what it is explained here. Whoops. So the people that are on the first quintile, so they have more wealth, they are losing life, they are premature death, less than the people that are with the fifth quintile, that they have more deprivation. The same for on the social ground, and the difference is clearly dramatic when you have a social and material wealth, and when you're deprived with the two. But it's not only that. Another aspect of inequalities is the rank that you have in the society. If you are, this is coming from a study that has been done in England with civil servants. And they looked at the bosses, the little bosses, the employees, and other people that were in civil servants without a regular job, for example. And at each age, 40, 65, or 70 to 90, you see that the bosses are dying less than the others that do not have this security of job. They all had job, but with a different rank in the society. So inequalities is very, very important from the point of view of people that are that take an importance for the life. And many studies have been done on that on Quebec, and everything is converging. For example, in the city of Quebec, there is a difference of life for people from almost 8 years from if you live in downtown to upper town. So what we will do with that? Well, our first reflex, and I have to go fast, I think, I have only 5 minutes. The first reflex is to have a caritative approach, to give something to people that are missing something. In Quebec, we are investing about 13 billion per year to support the revenue of the people. 19 billion is coming from the federal, and 11 billion is coming from Quebec. To support a lot of programs, and the main characteristic of all these programs is you have to declare that you need it. You're too poor to do it by yourself, but you need, so you are excluding yourself from all the society to determine that you need a specific program to be supported. So all these programs are doing a lot of social exclusion. It's a kind of machine of social exclusion. And what is the result of these programs? Here we have some statistics that are coming from 2002 to 2015. And the people that were living under I would say it's the survival level measured by the market basket measure, because it's not a poverty level threshold, it's really a survival threshold, this measure. So in 2002, we had 10.8% of people that were living under that in Quebec. And after 13 years of many programs and all these 30 millions each year, we still have 10.9 people that are living with that. So what do we do with that? I think that in this table we have a clue of what we can do. And look at here. If the people that are going from 18 to 64 years old have almost the same percentage of poverty. And when you get 65 and more, then it goes by 4, a fourth part of it. We were discussing with people, and many people in community organization were saying, when I had 62, 63, I was having the experience, I don't know how to say it in English, the experience. They want to have 65, because when they get 65, they are released from a lot of preoccupation, because they are then having the right to have a basic income revenue for old age people. So it's quite clear that we have the solution. Because, in fact, to have a basic revenue is a right that has been inscribed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights after the Second War. So we will not read it, but just look at the Article 25. So, from a public point of view, basic income revenue should be universal. We discussed about it yesterday. Universal because we need to work on the social exclusion. Everybody should have the right to have a basic revenue, independent of any other condition. Because if you introduce a program that will do exams and ask you why you need it, you are beginning to create inegalities and social exclusion. It should be unconditional for the same reason almost, but unconditional also for to improve the woman's status, the handicap, the people that are living with the handicap status, the difference we do within many people because of their conditions. And so it should be universal and unconditional. It should cover the basic needs. So this is a difference between the left and right, perhaps, but if we think of a basic income, it should be not a trap to poverty or a way to take away all our social programs. And then it is a universal measure, unconditional, that is complementary to our other universal programs, our universal health programs, education programs, pension programs, etc. We are, I'm coming from Gaspé, in Bas-Saint-Laurent, it's in Gaspésie-les-Îles, but with another region, just the neighbor, we are working on a demonstration project for a basic income for all the region. So if you are interested to know more about it, we have a Sunday breakout session at 9:10 at room 1010, and you will have the chance to practice your French. Alors, ça va être un atelier en français. Tout le monde est vraiment invité à venir participer à cet atelier pour en savoir davantage. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Yves. Next up is Scott Wemmingwens.
And I'd just like to take a moment to set down what I'd like to say. Playing a little bit of catch up with my professional experience. I'd recently relocated my office, and I was thinking about a few of the things that we're going to. I started to think about a bit of my experiences there, and I'll just name off a few of my colleagues. My colleague Victoria, we normally talk about music, movies, kayaking. My coworker Veronica, who always brings in a big laugh, and my coworker Candace, who starts off every day, every conversation with, "How was your evening last night?" And sitting in my new office, I'm looking around and I'm thinking, I'm not gonna have that anymore, but that's okay. It's but it's a brighter experience. Where I'm located, I'm more in nature, I'm more in tune with nature, and I love that. And then I started to think it's going to make our reunions a whole lot more meaningful. We're gonna have reasons to get together for lunch and share our experiences. And you know, change is scary, and that's been sort of a bit of the theme in the past year and a half, 2 years, in talking about basic income. And I want to start off by saying, excuse me, Bonjour, Bidaj Mo and Dishnikas, Bodwad Mi and Dao, Doganing and Doji, Wabshke Maingan and Dode. Good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Wemigwans, and I'm a policy analyst with the Neon and Services at the North Shore Tribal Council, Mama Westwin. And a bit of my work entails with what my identity is. And the word Bidajmo, I can't translate it. The word itself means one who brings the word. And that's my livelihood, that's my job, who I am. So we went touring around a lot of the regions, a lot of our brothers and sisters in neighboring First Nations, getting to know their territories, getting to know who they were, and reflecting on a lot of that experience afterwards. It started to make me think about yesterday when I was thinking about Hamilton, my life experience. I left my home community of Wakonekong when I was 16, and before my 19th birthday, I had already lived in Hamilton. I've lived in Kitchener, Sault Ste. Marie, Sudbury, and Toronto. Then I returned to Sudbury for post-secondary education, and finished all of that in what seemed like a whirlwind. I was pretty adamant at getting it done. And afterwards, that's when life started for me. But things sort of changed for my identity when I received a letter in the mail from Indigenous and Northern Affairs Canada. All of this legal work, but in the end, the piece of paper I got in the mail told me that I was an off-reserve Indian. My status had changed from being a part of a community to being labeled off-reserve. About 10 years with life experience, seeing what this fantastic province has to offer and getting the best education that I could through Cambrian at Laurentian University, I traded in a bit of who I was for those fantastic opportunities, amazing opportunities. I was a program manager, I was a board director, I'm currently a policy analyst, and a few more roles there. It seemed like every position that I've ever wanted, ever pointed at, I worked pretty quick to achieve. So going back into one of the communities, I'm sitting there and we have a room full of individuals like this, and we start talking about the specifics of basic income. And everyone was on board with it. They wanted to see change. They believed in change, and they believed that change was long overdue. They did sit there and talk about the change, the fear of it, what they would be losing. Some comments were, I kind of I'm kind of not in the point in my life where I can wake up by myself in the mornings. I need my worker there to help me get that going every day. There were other changes that people shared. And one individual that I was thinking about, I'm going to name him Jeff for the purpose of this story. We were presenting the specifics of the program, the coming pilot project, and he was a little frustrated with what we were telling him. And he focused on that. He goes, what is more money gonna fix? What is more money gonna fix? Then I started picking up on it. I started thinking, there's something else here. And about a half hour into us being there, visiting the group and whatnot, the topic of substance abuse and mental health came up. And then I saw where his direction started to change. And I said, okay, here it is. So we started focusing on that. And instead of letting his frustration fester to the point where I thought he was going to kick us out of the room, we started coming up with solutions for his family, solutions for his community, solutions for our nation. I can't go step by step as to what those solutions are. That's an ongoing process. And you know what, I don't find there's a lot of fear and resistance to the change, especially when others remind me, and I wasn't around for this one, but no, we've been in the field of income assistance, social assistance, and we've seen a major overhaul, a major change about 21 years ago. And some of the interesting comments lifted up the room when everyone said, well, we've gone through that, we can do it all over again. And it's always a chance to do better. So the fear, the resistance in those communities, you start hearing a lot more individuals say, I need the opportunity to grow. I need the opportunity to lift myself up. And a lot of them are believing, a lot of the people that we have met along the road in this journey have been saying just that. You know, because with the current system that they rely upon, you know, there's legislation in place that, you know, would, I don't want to say hinder, but, you know, it kind of dampens their experience a bit. It's a lot of policing. It's a lot of having to maintain month by month by month. So there is structure there, but it's not their structure. There are individuals sitting around the table with us who have visited with us and have said, I can do this. You know, I have my little children at home, and you know, but I need to believe in myself and believe for them, because where we're currently at right now, where we're going in the future though, I'm going to give them all the life lessons they need. And then I sit there and I think back to what I was sharing about myself with you. There's, in the discussion of change, you know, there is hope. There is hope. That's all I wanted to close my statement off. So I thank all of you for being here today, and I want to say miigwech.
Miigwech. And our final speaker for this panel is Barb Borax.
Hello? It works. There it goes. Can everyone hear me? Yeah? Okay. I'm aware that my presence Here I am, the Executive Director of Faith-Based Organization, Christian Jewish Dialogue, or CJBT, speaking about convergence at the North American Basic Income Congress. My fellow panelists all bring a specific expertise to the issue: health, ethics, indigenous, where my presence may appear somewhat perplexing and even out of context. And that, in a nutshell, is a challenge of convergence. Trying to create the context which will allow many different sectors, health, which will allow all of our sectors to work together in a productive manner. What makes this work different? We're dealing with, although that is a challenge. What makes it difficult is our human nature. I'll discuss this a bit later on, but first I'd like to tell you a bit about the journey that has resulted in me being on this plenary talking about the challenge of convergence. To do this, I need to go into a bit of recent history. In October 2015, the CJBT held a conference at St. Mike's College at U of T. It was called Responsibility to Engage. It celebrated the 50th anniversary of a conference held in the Vatican in the early 1960s by the Catholic Church. One document which emerged was called Nostra Aetate, and this means in our time. This document began the reversal of almost 2,000 years of an inward-looking church which helped foment anti-Semitism to one which took up the challenge of engaging productively with the world. Our conference decided to build on this challenge. We hired 4 Massey College students who each organized a session dealing with the topic: environment, culture, economics, and politics. Their instructions were to put together a panel of speakers, each of whom had a very different perspective on the issue. The key element was to find speakers who were prepared to come to the table and dialogue with each other, not debate. We wanted the audience to experience that it was possible to bring ideas to the table, not in order to prove you're right, but to share your ideas and maybe come up with something better. Some panelists were better than others, but the overall experience was quite stunning. The energy and excitement was pretty palpable. Immediately following this conference, the CJBT decided to focus this momentum on the issue of basic income, and thus what we're calling the Bias Economy Project was formed. Bias is an arm's-length project of CJBT. Its participants, advisors, and leaders represent a convergence of sectors and ideas: academic, business, lived experience, faith, NGO, indigenous, LGBTQ, labor, and social justice workers. These are all individuals who are comfortable saying, "I don't know," or "I hadn't thought of that before." And both of these phrases are key to successfully converging ideas. We decided to organize a conference to discuss whether we could productively bring together numerous convergent perspectives. We call this conference the Basic Income Initiative, and it was held in October 2016. Some of the organizers of and speakers at that conference are here today. Sheila Reguer, Evelyn Forget, Art Eglinton spoke last night. For this conference, we identified 3 topics: work and worth, systemic change, and health and well-being. For each topic, we had 3 speakers: a topic expert, a theologian, and a person with lived experience. 3 different perspectives, 3 different sets of experiences, and 3 different contexts, all converging. The audience was by invitation only and represented over 60 agencies and organizations. Eric McVeigh from the Canadian Farmers Union was there, as were Amanda Robar and Tracy Smith-Carrier, all our speakers at this conference today. Again, the response was quite extraordinary. The most commonly heard comment was that the stories from the individuals with lived experience helped to frame and make real all the issues raised by both the topic experts and theologians. What surprised us most was how open everyone was to having a faith-based voice at the table. So we asked why. Here's what we heard. First, the presence of a faith-based voice helped to ensure a non-partisan agenda. And secondly, the deep experience that faith-based agencies have with frontline work. We heard from those with lived experience that yes, They turn to the government agencies for financial support, but they turn to faith and non-faith-based agencies to be treated like a human being. We followed both these conferences with a third one, held in October 2017. One of the conveners of that conference was Catherine Willoughby. Catherine Willoughby of the Justice Panel this morning. This time, we focused on the multi-faith perspective toward basic income. The themes amongst all the presenters were consistent. The need to focus the issues on human dignity, the common good, and solidarity. Perhaps the ideas presented were best summed up by Charles Clark, an economist from St. John's University in New York. He utilizes Catholic social thought to help evaluate economic outcomes. I suspect Danny Roderick would support this perspective. 3 of Roderick's commandments to economists are: efficiency is not everything. Economic modeling is more craft than science. And unrealistic assumptions are okay, but unrealistic critical assumptions are not okay. It is in the concept of critical assumptions that the realities and challenges of working convergently become evident, and this is where human nature comes into play. In order to organize these 3 conferences, a lot of discussions took place. We met with representatives from many organizations involved in social justice, social policy, research, and delivery. No one disagreed that poverty is bad, that poverty leads to marginalization, to uncertainty, to fear, and disruption. No one disagreed that everyone deserves to live with self-respect and dignity. No one disagreed that the current systems, including knowledge building, do not reflect the diversity of our societies. But when we ask institutions to help create the catalytic changes required to adapt our social support systems to the new realities of our global economies, people hesitated. We heard over and over again that the issue of basic income was, quote, a file being watched, that it didn't fit into the mandate of the organization. We heard it was anywhere from a, quote, military-industrial plot to enslave those in poverty, to, quote, an attack on work and the fulfillment a person receives from work. We were intrigued. The same people who were working with organizations to help those most in need were shying away from a structural change that could help those in need. So we investigated further, and here's what we identified as a critical problem. Over the past 40 years, our institutions, business, academic, faith, government, labor, left, right, and middle, have developed processes and ways of working that sustain the institution, but do not allow for openness to ideas or ways of working that do not easily fit into their status quo processes. We have found it is less about the idea than it is about the internal structures, that is, the ways in which decisions are made and our assumptions about what is important. This is what's preventing us from adapting to new realities. What we have done societally is created institutional structures that facilitate teamwork, cooperation, and consensus building. This is all good. But the flip side of these structures is they can frequently lead to an inability to act catalytically, because taking an innovative and visionary stance may lead us to losing our place in the institution and maybe even losing our jobs. Leadership, to a large extent, has been replaced with the need to maintain one's position. We are comfortable working in a convergent or multidisciplinary manner as long as the convergence and multidiscipline are still under the umbrella and control of the institution for which we work. Once we broaden out the definitions of convergence to be broadly multi-sector, we have to begin to question our critical assumptions. Well, that's where we feel uncomfortable and even threatened. To paraphrase Bernie Sanders, some of us would rather go down with the Titanic as long as we have first-class seats. This is back to the original point. Frequently, our human natures do not allow us to review our critical assumptions. We confuse what is relevant to our jobs and our positions with what is communally important. We are substituting our values, be they labor, business, academic, faith, or social justice, for public values. Thomas Kuhn wrote, "The answers you get depend on the questions you ask." The conferences organized by CJDG and bias questioned some of our critical assumptions. As a result of what we've learned, we've developed 4 projects. The first is a 20-minute media piece of film linking the problems of living in poverty with the systemic and administrative issues which are sustaining the problem. The second is a series of 10 podcasts focusing on the assumptions we need to address. For example, how do we define work? The difference between a charity model and a justice model for social support. The inherent indignity of our current social support structure. How does this affect our democratic structure? Our tax system, is it helping or hindering progress? The third is a multi-sector consortia to build a business case for broadening out smart city development to include a definitive social context. And the last one is a multi-sector leadership table to address the concerns of sectors with respect to basic income. We want to ensure that realities and not myths are informing the sectors. Believe it or not, there's a logic tying these projects together. They're all focused on questioning our critical assumptions, and they all came out of a convergence of ideas, experiences, and vision. All these projects require funding, but the same internal structures that prevent many institutions from working catalytically apply to many of our funding agencies. The use of terms such as innovation, vision, and systemic change by many funding agencies is only matched by we are focused on housing or youth or mental health. These are all important issues, but it's hard to address systemic change if you parse out and isolate all the factors from each other. Another frequent requirement is the need for definitive metrics, such as how much change you have influenced over a 12-month period, essentially your rate of return on investment. Systemic change can take years, and many mistakes are made. Our funding structures have become impatient with both. Thus far, almost all funding for the project have come from faith-based organizations and individuals. One last comment. We forget that neither a business case nor an economic model was developed in the Marshall Plan. It was just done because it was the right thing to do based on lessons learned. The Bretton Woods Agreement was established, and many of its basic tenets were negotiated during a 3-week meeting. Basic income is a lot simpler than either of these. It only needs cooperation, convergence of ideas, and leadership. Everyone has the capacity to contribute to the greater good. We just need to be brave. Thank you.
Excuse me. I knew this was going to happen. It'll be worse tomorrow. Can we give just another round of applause for everybody on the panel? I'm sure they've given us a huge amount to think about. If there are questions, we have about 2 minutes, 3 minutes left. Does anyone have a really burning question that they need to ask? But then I would also point out to everybody that, I mean, we are around for the conference. We're going to coffee break. People are happy to speak to others. And if you have specific questions of anyone that you've heard during the conference, they'll be happy to answer individually. Okay, we have a different format from yesterday, and we have a mic that you can line up at if you have a question. Yes?
Okay, I'll be quick. Is this on? Can you hear? Okay, good. I asked this question last night as well, and I have to apologize. My colleague Amber and I are doing research on this, and we'd like to ask most panelists that we can this same question, and it's about the environment and how it might be integrated into basic income strategies. So the first part of the question is, do any of you know of the ways in which environmental concerns are being implemented and studied in pilot projects anywhere in the world about basic income? And the second part of the question, maybe, and that might be more for for you, Eve, but anybody on the panel. The second part of the question is, can you think creatively, especially maybe from Indigenous perspectives, the way that basic income might be made to nurture our human and nature relationship, to mitigate environmental impacts or even create positive environmental impacts?
Thank you. Before anybody answers, what I'm going to suggest is that we take all three who are lined up at the microphone very brief questions, and then we'll have a chance to briefly answer. Thank you.
Okay, hi Sheila, I'm John. I think my question is for Eve, but I found the charts fascinating, and I wondered if there's been any research done, or if we know when the child tax benefit ends, does that increase poverty?
I'm Jane, and my question is also for Eve, and it comes out of a bit of the dark humor that often plays out within the poverty community. So with the early mortality rate for those experiencing low income, that humor is that it certainly saves the government money on pensions. So still looking at that dark humor, a question for later perhaps, or an answer for later, is how do we work that bit of logical black humor into the discussion of financing basic income? It is pretty dark.
We're going to sneak in one more. This is the last one.
Mine's a quick
Right?
one. My name is Paul. Sheila, my question's for you. I'm just curious. I see it's being all this stuff is being filmed. I'm curious if we'll have access to these things afterwards, like all the discussions, all the presentations, all that stuff. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I will answer that one very quickly first. Anybody who is presenting anything at the Congress is invited to submit their presentation, whether it's written notes or a PowerPoint presentation or whatever. There's a deadline that we've given people. They submit them. They will be then available on our websites. Oh, you've got to wait.
Hello? Just about the environmental impact and pilot programs. Where is it? Oh, there you are. I'm not sure. What came to mind when you asked that was in the Barcelona experiment. They are doing a part of it that's related to local businesses. So you have like a local coin and use local businesses. So in that way, maybe that's one model that can, encourage environmental sustainability. I can give you the contact of the person who's doing it if you need.
And as for Aboriginal perspective, I would like to ask you perhaps to answer first.
Okay, yeah, I was, excuse me there. I was thinking about the environmental question, the impacts in the communities. One of the things that I think we can expect to happen is return to our standard practices in our communities. As it stands right now, there's a lot of people in the community who may not have the resources, may not have the capabilities, the abilities to do a lot of growing, harvesting, a lot of caretaking. Makes me think of an individual who used to help around the community there, but instead, he had to turn his attention to more ways to be self-sufficient. But he would go door to door and assist a lot of the elders in our communities with what's around their home, inside their home, just lending a helping hand. A lot of the folks who used to clear timber, a lot of those who would return to their traditional practices of being out on the water. I think that's something we can all expect once we see a big change.
So, Can you remind in 2 words your question?
My question was, you showed with the OAS
Yeah.
that poverty increases.
Uh-huh.
And I work at homeless shelters, and I have lots of people who wait to turn 65.
Yeah.
So they can finally get enough money to get out.
Yeah.
So my question is, with the child tax family, when somebody grows up and you lose the child tax benefit, does that increase poverty?
Of course. Of course. Yeah. And the way we are also distributing the different programs for child, for example, if you are in Quebec, we have what we call protection de la jeunesse or things like that. So when you get 18, then you're losing all the support. Well, there are now increasing consciences of this, and we are putting the limit to 25 now in Quebec. But after 25, it will be the same problem. So in fact, we need a universal support. And there was another question that I have not, no?